Hello everybody, this is Havoc with some much desired hands-on campaign gameplay for Total War Saga Troy. Provided by Creative Assembly to the Total War content partners, we were given 5 days to cover 2 factions in Troy, Menelaus with the Greeks and Paris with the Trojans, to a maximum of 40 turns each. With several content creators focusing on straight gameplay, I thought I'd play the full 40 turns or close enough, then show you what that looks like, just to give you something a little bit different. So for this video, I will be looking at Menelaus around turn 34 in a sort of form of overview, looking at what I've done in my campaign, obstacles I've had to overcome, and give some early pointers so you'll know more along what strategy to follow when you come around to play it. And just to emphasize, this is a work in progress build. Anything you see here can change, so don't hold this as canon for release. Let's dive in. Faction traits. Let's quickly look at what we have to play with as Menelaus on the faction selection screen. As a faction, he has 2 unique abilities. First is Call to Arms, and it's a unique take on the World Recruitment panel from Warhammer. It allows Menelaus to recruit certain units from any defensive or military ally. They can then be recruited anywhere your army is. The kicker is that these units both cost more to recruit and take longer to recruit, but they are certainly worth it in many cases. The second ability is Spartan Colonies. The Greeks are renowned for their colonies, and as Sparta you will be able to instantly colonize any race settlement within your line of sight without sending an army. All it takes is a certain amount of multiple resources and boom, instantly yours. The only condition here is that the further away the raised settlement is, the more it costs to colonize. Moving on, his roster focuses on heavy infantry, and as such he does not have access to the archer hero type, and his unique units are 2 sets of, go figure, heavily armed axemen and a unit of light but very fast spears. This is Sparta after all, and while we aren't in the era of King Leonidas and his pedigree of elite warriors, Menelaus' reign certainly helped lay the foundation. Lastly, just to give you a taste, there are 2 victory types, Total War and Homeric. I will go into greater details about these in a later video. It's kind of my way of keeping you coming back to the channel. The campaign. Now on to the campaign at turn 34. I chose this turn as my allies and I had just wrapped up a war against the northern factions, and it was doubtful that I could even get over to the Corinthians before the end of my 40 turn limit. My campaign had a pretty humble beginning. Starting in Sparta, King Menelaus has to deal with some rebels to the south. Dealing with those after building up my army a little bit, I was able to securely use my Spartan colony ability to snag Etus, and within a few turns conquer Scythra, gaining me the entire province. From there, it was a short war with Pylos as my allies swept in to aid in my campaign. Although my province is currently split, in the future, I would hope that I can trade some regions, which is doable, and that my Argos friends would find it more acceptable. Recovering from that war set up my conquests to the north, including nabbing my first gold settlement around turn 25. Having a gold settlement cranking out gold has its benefits and issues, as we're about to see in a bit. And lastly, leading to turn 34 was the continuation of my northern campaign, as the boys and I carved up the last regions to our north, which included a giant's meeting place, allowing me to recruit units that are a bit bigger than your normal troops, if you can afford them. Now, I only completely own 2 provinces, with settlements in 4 different total. At the end of this turn, I honestly thought I had conquered quite a bit of land, and was a bit disappointed that the map seemed kinda small, until I took a look. I kinda panned out, and saw the big picture. There is a lot of land to cover, and I didn't feel quite so accomplished after all. The right things. Considering this was my second campaign playthrough as Menelaus, there were some things that I believe I had worked on correctly from my first campaign, the biggest being handling the multiple resources. As you can see on the top left bar, I have a decent stockpile of resources at hand, and with several of these, I'm making some solid income per turn, as it were. The multi-resource economy is certainly a new game changer, and a much needed one at that. But let's dive into the nitty-gritty to see what's really going on. Going into the details first, we can see the breakdown of everything affecting my resource generation and expenditure. Food is by far the most important to me, as it is necessary for recruiting and upkeep of my armies. I'm making a ton of it even at turn 40, and you'll see that my armies are soaking up over 3,500 food per turn. Wood and stone are necessary for fueling my empire development, so they're equally important in some ways. Without these two resources, I wouldn't be able to build. Bronze has been my least necessary for the early game simply because not really any units I have need bronze a lot, so I just haven't recruited the ones that do. That will change in the mid game, I have no doubt, but for me now, it's just not a priority. But the last is gold. And let me tell you a little secret. The AI loves gold. Like Smaug levels of love for gold. By looking at the details, you can see that my gold income is 134 per turn, 66 of which is being used in diplomacy. Heading to the trade reports, and you can see that I've managed to secure 2 barter deals over multiple turns to supply an absurd amount of resources for what is in essence not a lot of gold. With gold a depletable resource, at the current rate, Alifera will be a goldless in around 27 to 29 turns. So, I could either continue to use it to fuel my empire expansion, I could revise some buildings to lessen how much I'm getting, or I can just hoard it and then dole it out piece by golden piece to secure other ventures for my kingdom. The next big area that saw success in my campaign was in building management. The building system here very much pulls its weight from Warhammer, and as such, it isn't too terribly difficult to master. I chose to focus first on provincial growth across my settlements, which then allowed me to quickly build every food building I could to help support my ever-growing army. Eventually, the gold mine itself solved my resource troubles, but only at the very end of my playthrough. Building military buildings was important for sure, and would be more so if I could have played past turn 40, as Sparta would have spawned many a future army. But by the time I focused on it truly in this campaign, my main army was already up north, and my secondary army was simply on public order patrol. Last are the army in battles. I'm not going to go into too much detail for my campaign playthrough, but I will say this: battles have been worked on for this build, and while not perfect, have been improved. When it comes to army recruitment, Menelaus' call to arms ability is immeasurably helpful. It's an encouragement to seek out alliances, which are actually pretty effective for once, and it gives you access to some pretty cool units you otherwise couldn't get. Could I play longer, I would especially like to see Agamemnon's guards, Agamemnon's companions, and the bows of Mycena. But alas, 40 turns was not long enough for my allies to unlock them, so I could not recruit them. Along with the right things I did during my campaign, there are always the opposites. I completely failed in 2 main areas: religion and agents. At turn 34, I only have one single respected goddess, Athena. I simply just did not focus on the gods during my campaign. I guess I'm just not used to having to worry about gods in a Total War game like this, so there was nothing that caused me to want to focus on them and keep track. But I was very wrong to think that, because the gods give lots of reasons to keep track. Athena gives massive buffs to spears, Hera to slingers, and Ares to swords and axes, and this is just a military benefit. I could have used all of them during my campaign, and it would have made things so much better, and I could have expanded faster, but I didn't. I just wasted it all away, and as a result, probably stunted my own empire growth in the long run. Appeasing the gods is definitely a necessary step, and you should learn from my mistake. Please learn from my mistake. And it was the same for the most part with agents. On building a temple, I unlocked a priestess, to which I used to try and keep divine will up in Sparta, but I never tried to unlock other agents. I think with only having 40 turns and playing Menelaus first, I rushed through playing and didn't spend a ton of time trying out the buffet of everything Troy was offering. Agents are immensely useful, and I use them much more effectively in my Paris playthrough. To wrap up this very summarized playthrough, Menelaus has a very interesting campaign with some great mechanics behind it. What little I conquered truly is only a fraction of the map, and it will be really interesting to see what a mid to late game empire looks like as you gain more and more allies, or maybe just focus on lone wolfing it. And just as an aside note, I purposefully left critiques out of this video. I wanted to focus on the campaign itself rather than the issues I found with it, as these issues can all be fixed and would therefore not really be relevant to the actual campaign. Stick around yet again for when I release my critique to the devs video, on my time with the preview build. That's all for my campaign overview. I do hope you enjoyed it. Be on the lookout for more videos on this preview build. This is Havoc, and I'm out of here.